feed the military.
Just a second. Make that statement again. You're against you're against the idea of taxing.
I think taxing the rich. If you're going to tax the rich and be able to spend more money on the military, I'm totally against that.
So it's where the money goes is what you're concerned about.
Absolutely. I'd much rather give that money to organizations that I believe in, that I feel that they're going to use that money to better the world.
So you mean social programs?
Social programs.
Okay.
Education, homelessness, healthcare, all these things are key programs that we tend to sort of push aside when it comes to the military. The military gets the lion's share in everything in this country. Everything. And so for us to just tax the rich more so we can feed the military more so that we can create more enemies, so we can create more opportunity, it's just a cycle that's never going to end.
Okay.
So I'm not convinced that the idea that taxing rich is going to solve social ills. That's not going to happen. I wish that was the fact. If that was the fact, I'm all for it.
And you'd be willing to pay your share of it as well.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you then where the money should be going then. Are we looking at, in your mind, and this is something actually that people have asked of Mr. Barack Obama, that he's been accused of being a socialist by the Republicans.
Well, you know, I mean, no matter what Obama says, they're going to accuse him of being
one or the other, right?
Something or another. I remember when he went to speak in front of the UN about the possibility of Palestine becoming a state. They said, "Oh my God, he's throwing Israel under the bus." Like, what? He just trashed.
And that was just before he met with Mr. Netanyahu.
Yeah, he wiped out the Palestinians off the face of the earth practically, and they're saying, "Oh, he's throwing Israel under the bus." Like, what are you talking about? You know? So there's never enough for that.
And by the way, that was just before the AIPAC meeting, which is a big Israeli meeting.
And it's like, you know, genuflected in front of every, you know.
that was interesting timing there.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's completely ridiculous how they corner him. No matter what he doesn't do enough. And that's
a good point that you mentioned, and I'm really glad that you brought that out. Now I want to ask you about your perspective. If we were to have a real alternative, would you consider, perhaps running for office? I mean,
no. You're not going to find me running for office.
Okay.
No, I have absolutely no interest in running for office. I love what I do. I think you can do far more impact on the outside than you do on the inside. I think people that run for office have a
certain skill set. Yeah, right.
Way about them. I don't have those skills. I don't think.
Well, you may not want to do it.
I can't lie really well. All of those things.
Is that what it takes?
I think it takes.
Is that salesmanship?
Really triangulate and create words that aren't
manipulate
language, manipulate conversation. Try to triangulate. I'm not a.
So you feel like you're too honest about that?
I think so. To be a politician in a serious way.
Who do you think should run that isn't running, or someone that you know or you've met here as a result of this event? Or
I think I want a smart person to run. I think Obama is as good as any. Really. Okay. I don't think he's a bad guy. He's as good as any. I think we have an opportunity to work with someone. We have to change the system that he's under.
But the system's a capitalist system, right?
When George W. Bush was running, he was not a very smart man. I mean, really, his thought process didn't come across as being very deep. I mean, Obama at least has the right synapses. Well, the right set of synapses that is able to actually talk about history, talk about issues, have some sort of context in what he says, and therefore it made it. I'm much more comfortable with someone like that. I know that other people will say, no, you don't want a smart bad guy in the White House. You want but for me, it's not about the guy. It's about the movement,
the policy, also the policy,
and the structures that we created that he has to work.
But we would certainly mean the government.
Well,
and if he had, but where do you start?
Well, you start in Congress. You start in Congress by changing some of the structures, by holding to those purse strings, by making sure that we don't continue to fund a bloated military that continues to create enemies around us, so we can continue to fund it more. I mean, I'm always floored by how many advertisements there are by Lockheed Martin. Any newspaper you pick up, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, General Dynamics, all these guys. That's money they take from the taxpayers so they can advertise, so they can take more money from the taxpayers.
But technology in general is big business. We've seen it with Apple. Yeah. Apple has grown, computers, etc.
Technology for the use of communicating with one another, creating a better world is different than the technology they use so they can pick out people from a from a building. That's a whole different type of technology.
Who would you speak to, by the way, if you could sit down with one person, if you had time? And I know you don't have a lot of time to do this, so fortunately you're volunteering. Who would you speak to and implore that we really look at our policies in terms of military spending? Who would that person be that you could sit down and talk to?
I don't know if it's one person. I just don't.
Well, who would you start with?
Obama would be a good start. I mean, you know.
Well, that wouldn't be a bad place to be.
Yeah.
You can just walk up the block and there.
I've talked to him a couple of times, you know, on a
in what context?
On a more of a social kind of sort of gathering. Get him around his ear for a couple of minutes.
Really?
That's
Were you introduced to him formally, or did you just kind of walk up to him?
I was introduced to him.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, you know, but
and then there's his wife.
To 500 other people at
True
the
that.
same time,
That's true.
you know, so it's not.
Are you a donor? So I mean, would
I am.
you? Okay, so you would be in that situation. You could possibly meet him in a private. Have you met Michelle Obama?
Yeah, I have.
Have you had a chance to speak with her about military policy?
No, not about military policy.
Okay.
I've talked to her about food policies.
Food, which is something that she's very much
Absolutely.
interested. She in fact shops at our farmers market, I understand, over on Vermont Avenue, etc. You are a big foodie here in D.C. People who don't know Busboys and Poets should know that it's based on a certain cultural principle that you kind of developed, I think, on your own in concert with many other like-minded people. How would you describe that principle?
Well, we like to think of ourselves as a tribe, an idea of a group of people who feel passionately about issues of social justice, about issues of environmental equity, things like that. So I mean, it's a cultural hub in a way, because for me, I believe that in order for you to create any kind of social change or political change, you have to start with cultural change. So we are a cultural hub. We bring people together to start seeing things in alternative ways. We don't do PowerPoint presentations. We don't give white papers. We get people together to see eye to eye and talk about issues, much like what's going on here, but more in a controlled context. So I think that's what we are. We are basically a cultural hub. That's what we do.
How have you gauged the success? So you've obviously grown.
I mean,
your staff has grown. Your environment is really beautiful, very unique. So where's the plan? Is the plan to expand as far?
People clearly need that connection with others. I mean, you see it here, you see it in other ways. People need to connect with other people. It's not enough just to send emails to people that you know, often, or people you don't know. You know, you send out emails, you get emails back, you delete this, you delete that, you read this, you read that. You don't really get a full sense of what's happening. When you meet people face to face and talk to them, you start getting that whole different energy. Creates a whole different energy. I mean, that's the beauty of this kind of gathering here at Freedom Plaza. It's not about coming up with solutions. I'm not sure we're going to come up with any solutions on this concrete. I think what we need is to see that we're not alone, that we're not crazy, that we're part of a big movement, that there's a lot of people that think like we do, and then we go back to our communities and create the change that we'll hope to see.
What do you think will be the outcome of that?
I think the outcome is energizing the movement again. I think waking people up. I think Americans are oftentimes seen as complicit. You know, they're dumbed down. They watch television, they read bad newspapers. They don't really get the full story. This is an opportunity to go beyond the newspapers, beyond the TV, beyond all that, beyond the commercial media, and say to each other, you know what? These solutions that they've been feeding us have not done really well. They've not been very good. And we can't keep thinking that we're stupid. We can't keep thinking that we're dumb. I mean, I have businesses. My businesses are grown. I don't understand Wall Street, how they structure it. I don't understand when they come up to me and they say, the world's going to end tomorrow unless we give $800 billion to these banks. I don't understand why we can't let a bank fail. I don't understand why we can't take over a bank, change the structures, the monetary structures. People think that the economy is like gravity. It's like the law of nature. It's not. The economy is created. It's a social construct. Just as we created, we can change it.
You believe that we can change it? Now, last two questions, and then number one, what would you see, again, what would you like to see tangibly come out of this that could affect policy and affect the way the money is spent in Washington? Besides just having the right to be here, which is in and of itself is a great right, you know, but how would you like to tangibly affect, if one little thing you could see that would make you feel as though you've really spent your time here and invested it well, what would you like to see happen on Capitol Hill?
For me, I'd like to see a change in the way we address the military-industrial complex. I think military is the demise of the this country is sucking out every resource possible. In this country, it's creating more enemies and is solving problems. And it continues to grow unless we put a check on it. To me, that's really where you go where the money is. The bulk of our money is going